This podcast is part of the It Was a Thing on TV podcast network.
An anthology on the bad, the short-lived, and the forgotten shows and events in television history. You are listening to It Was a Thing on TV.
No, that's it. I'm not modeling anymore for the two of you. Well, I guess I just had my first taste of the filthy side of this business. Need I remind you, sirs, I am a male model, not a male prostitute.
Episode number 613, submission number 1496. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home aired in syndication from September 12th of 1972 to October 8th of 1974 for, oh my gosh, 48 episodes over technically 3 seasons, but it's more like 2 seasons and like an 1/8 of a season or a 1/6 of a season. We'll get into that a little bit later. All right, here comes the theme. Sing along if you know the words.
I love my mom and dad and my brothers too, and the groovy way we get along.
Every time the slightest little thing goes wrong, Mom starts to sing this familiar song.
Wait till your father gets, until your father gets, wait till your father gets home.
Dad's not so bad and he seldom gets mad.
And we aren't about to desert him. Kids today like to have their own way, and what Daddy doesn't know won't hurt him. I think my mom's just swell.
But she starts to yell.
Every time we have a fuss, just wait till your father gets, until your father gets, wait till your father gets home. See what I mean? Wait till your father gets home. We know.
I love my mom and dad and my brothers too, and the groovy way we get along. Why is my voice cracking? Apparently I'm going through puberty. But every time the slightest thing goes wrong, Mom starts to sing this familiar song. Wait till your father gets, until your father gets, wait till your father gets home. Dad's not so bad and he seldom gets mad, and we aren't about to desert him. Kids today like to have their own way, and what Daddy doesn't know won't hurt him. I think my mom's just swell, but she starts to yell every time we have a blast. Oh, good heavens, there goes my voice again. Just wait till your father gets, until your father gets, wait till your father gets home. See what I mean? Wait till your father gets home. We know. Wait till your father gets home. Today, the day this is released, is March 6th. And 3 days ago, on March 3rd, something happened. And, well, I hate to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to have Yosemite Sam, non-Mel Blanc Yosemite Sam, I should say it.
He's a 51. Who cares?
Thanks for caring. As we do every year for our birthdays, we pick one special episode and we sort of make it our own little thing. If we go back in history, if you haven't been with us for all that long, I'm sorry about that, but you've missed a lot over the last 6.5 or so years. When we first started, I didn't have a good propensity at picking worthwhile money in the banks. Talking about You Don't Know Jack. Talking about, good heavens, the Hudson Brothers Razzle Dazzle Show, one of those shows that will live in infamy in this podcast.
Oh, it was so painful. I wanted to die during that episode.
And I think he actually did clinically die for about 5 minutes.
And it didn't help. It was the last episode of the 3-episode taping.
Oh, good heavens. That's back when we did 3 episodes. You're right about that. I've learned my lesson since then. I think over the last 3 years, yeah, it's been 3 years. I was going to say 4 years, but I think it's been 3 years. I did a little bit better. I did Madam's Place, I believe, 3 years ago. And then 2 years ago, I did The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley. And then last year, I don't even remember what I did last year. That's my memory going at my ripe old age of 51. How dare I forget Sledgehammer last year? I think I got another winner here, guys. And this is going to be, like I said, a long episode, 48 episodes. To start off with, this series is a bit of, I don't want to call it like an anomaly or kind of a rarity, but you really had cartoons in the 70s through basically the late 80s. You didn't have them in prime time. Yes, you had Where's Huddles, but then after Where's Huddles, what would be the next primetime cartoon? Maybe The Simpsons? I mean, that's as good of a guess as any, I think, because I don't remember any sort of primetime cartoons in the 80s until 89, The Simpsons. So you have this almost 20-year drought where you don't have primetime cartoons. And really, at this era, for essentially that 20 years, cartoons were relegated to daytime. Specifically, weekdays, syndication, but also Saturday morning cartoons. And Greg, don't be like what you did like the last couple of episodes. Hey, Mike, can you tell us what Saturday morning cartoons are? It hasn't been that long. Well, it actually kind of has. It's probably been like close to 30 years since we had a legitimate cartoon block on ABC, NBC, CBS. You did have the Fox Kids or whatnot up until like the early 2000s, but I say the less said about that, the better. This is like really an anomaly in all this because this is, as I said earlier, a syndicated series. This show was aimed more towards adults. This was not a series for the kids. It got into contemporary topics, some of which really pushed the envelope. Nothing that would really, offend a kid or make a parent ashamed if a kid saw this. But they really did get into a lot of controversial topics. What the series is about, it's about a family. You've got a husband, you've got a wife, you've got 3 kids, and you've got their sort of crackpot neighbor who has all sorts of conspiracy theories, and he's a little bit off his rocker, to say the least. The patriarch of the family is Harry Boyle. His wife is Irma. His daughter is Alice, and he has 2 sons named Chet and Jamie. And the paranoid conspiracy theorist next door neighbor is Ralph Kane. It should also be added before we get into the voices behind the talent that this show came about because it was a segment on Love American Style called Love and the Old-Fashioned Father. It wasn't animated. It was done with a live cast, but it made the transition to animation. And a little bit of trivia, I'm sure you guys know this, but do you guys know the other series that came to being after being a segment on Love American Style, talking about OG Love American Style?
Happy Days.
Yes. Happy Days was a segment on Love American Style before it made the transition to being the series we all know and love. With that little tidbit out of the way, we're going to get to who's who on this series. Playing Harry Boyle, Father Dowling himself, Tom Bosley. Did I really credit Tom Bosley as being Father Dowling instead of Howard Cunningham?
Well, hold on, Mike. It does make sense because we just said Happy Days came from Love American Style.
Okay, but I'm saying, why did I credit him as Father Dowling, which only ran for like 2 seasons, instead of saying Howard Cunningham, a show that ran for 10 seasons or 11 seasons? My priorities are out of whack in my old age.
You were too old for David the Gnome when it first aired. Just give yourself some grace here, buddy.
No, wait, no. I remember David the Gnome when it first aired, and I totally forgot that David the Gnome had Tom... What?
The ending of David the Gnome had me in tears, guys.
Okay, I've never seen the is it the final episode you're talking about or the ending of
Yes.
okay, so what happened in the final episode of David the Gnome? I think you can spoil it, what, 35 years later?
David and Lisa die and turn into intertwined trees.
The fuck?
I was actually going to say I'm sure they died in the end, but yeah, I was afraid to ask how they died.
Old age.
Okay, I was afraid like a giant went through the forest and stepped on him or something.
A gnome only lives 1,600 years, bro.
Well, darn it, I'm sorry that he didn't get to see 1601. But it actually kind of makes a little bit of sense in my mind that they intertwined and became a tree. It does make sense in my sort of weird little world. But I'm glad I now have closure to David the Gnome, which I saw very sparingly back in the day. Well, good. I'm glad one of us has closure, unlike me with Beat the Clock in 1980, you sons of bitches.
But you got closure, Mike. You got closure years later.
We're still missing the second to last episode and the third to last episode and the fourth to last episode. I don't have complete closure.
But you saw the final episode, Mike. Isn't that closure enough for you?
I want to know what happened to Guy and Ronald Hoovis that week. Don't tell me when I have closure.
Listen, I'm never going to get the final episode from Pressure Luck in 1986, okay? At least you got your closure with the final episode of Beat the Clock.
Well, I think we know what happened in the final episode of Pressure Luck. There was no formal close because weren't they canceled kind of abruptly?
I know that, but they've never shown like the rest of them on Buzzer and whatever.
I'm sure you'll get your closure sooner or later.
Me too, Mike.
Jeez, I did not expect that for my birthday. Hi there, Bizarro Whammy.
I ate some of the cake. Is that okay?
The only cake that I had available is a urinal cake, so I don't know what you're doing eating that.
Oh, damn it!
I'm sorry, you saw that it was yellow, you thought it tasted like lemon, and, well, I didn't eat any lemons. Sorry.
Well, at least it was tasty.
Playing Irma Boyle in this series is Joan Gerber, a well-known name from the voice acting industry. She did many voices: DuckTales, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Duck Dodgers, all sorts of stuff. A lot of Disney stuff. The Little Mermaid, the series, Goof Troop, Tiny Toon Adventures. She did a couple of episodes. So definitely a veteran of the animated arts. Playing the older son, Chet Boyle. Actually, we have two voices. The first is David Hayward. And really, outside of this, he's really not known for any one thing. He was on 7 episodes of Beverly Hills 90210 in the 1994-95 season. He was on 6 episodes in Knots Landing in 1988 and 89. And I'm sure, given maybe about a minute or so, Greg can probably pinpoint what episodes those are, what happened.
Who is this again?
David Hayward. If you want a character name, he played David Lamb.
Okay.
So while he's doing that, let me just fill in some more gaps into his career. He played Ben Weston on Texas back in 1982, and he was Chet Boyle for 14 episodes. So for the other 34 episodes, they got another voice. They got a much more recognizable voice. Not necessarily the voice is recognizable, but the name is, because that name has done quite a bit of cartoon work. In those last 34 episodes, you had Lenny Weinrib voicing Chet Boyle. He voiced, among other characters in cartoons and actual live action TV, he voiced Grimace in the McDonald Land commercials.
Okay, now I've updated on David Lamb, okay? The character of David Lamb from Knots Landing. Okay, Chico. He was the guy that Jill slept with in that storyline where she tried to murder Val.
I am aware of this.
Yeah. He was the guy she quote unquote slept with in San Francisco as the alibi to try and murder Val. As it turns out, that eventually it's revealed that he got a VD and he thought that Jill gave it to him.
Oh!
I thought we were going to talk about adult content with Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, not adult content in Knots Landing. But anyhow, getting back to Lenny Weinrib, he voiced Grimace in the McDonaldland commercials back in the day. He also was HR Puffin Stuff. There you go. He voiced Inch High Private Eye, if you remember that. Who didn't like Inch High Private Eye back in the day? And he was the original voice of Scrappy Doo. Oh, it's his fault.
What?
Yes, the original voice of Scrappy Doo. So it's all his fault. Providing a voice to the daughter Alice Boyle is Christina Holland. She played Tina Rickles on 47 episodes of The Courtship of Eddie's Father. And she actually played Alice Boyle in that live-action segment that became Wait Till Your Father Gets Home on Love American Style. So she made the transition from real life to animation. Lastly, we're going to talk about the youngest child, who also, like the Chet Boyle voices, was done by two different people. First, it was done by Jackie Earle Haley, who we didn't talk about all that long ago. We did talk about him on one episode of Get a Life. Chris versus Donald. He played Chris Elliott's cousin Donald. And actually, I mentioned that occasionally Shout TV on Plex shows Get a Life. They showed it this morning, and darn it, I wish I didn't have to go to work. I wish I would have snuck in watching a little bit of Get a Life before the kids came, just sitting there laughing my butt off. No, I got to see maybe about 10 minutes as I was getting ready for work, but I needed that. The kids will never understand the greatness of Get a Life. I'm sorry. They can take their TikToks and take their Instagrams and shove it up there. Moving on. Outside of Jackie Earle Haley, who voiced Jamie Boyle for 11 episodes, that would mean 37 more episodes are voiced by another person. And this person would go on to much bigger and better things in the future. Talking about Willie Ames, star of the Oscar award-winning movie Zapped, but also I think we'd better know him from a little show called Charles in Charge.
One of my biggest regrets is I didn't screen cap the guy who thought we were being serious on Twitter.
And we're going to talk about that every time we talk about Scott Baio or Willie Ames. They were both in the Oscar award-winning movie Zapped. And that one time where somebody just commented to us, Zapped didn't win any Oscars. It's like, oh my gosh. Read The Onion. Look at the source. This didn't come from the AP. This didn't come from Reuters or Variety. It came from the friggin' Onion. Some people get it and some people don't. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Willie Ames was Bible Man. If you remember those videos back in the 90s and early 2000s, with those particulars out of the way, we have a lot of episodes. We got 48. We're going to dive into them. And we're going to start with that first episode, which is titled The Fling. Harry is accused of having an affair when he drives a client to the airport and they become stranded at a motel. And also, since they get stranded at the motel, that starts a little bit of rumors that maybe Harry's cheating on his wife. Well, it makes sense. Well, it makes sense that there's rumors about the cheating and whatnot, even though it is all wholesome. We don't need a divorce happening on episode 1 because we're not going to make it to episode 2 in this case. We do have a known voice in the voice acting world. Unfortunately, we don't have a character, so I'm going to guess since he's in more than one episode, he's in numerous episodes, he provides, I'm guessing, I don't want to say like background voices, but let's say just other voices, additional voices, as they'd say on IMDb. We're talking about John Stevenson, Mr. Slate on the Flintstones. But much more beyond that, not just Mr. Slate. John Stevenson voiced Fancy Fancy on Top Cat, among other voices. He voiced a police sergeant. He was basically Officer Dibbles higher up on numerous episodes. But like I said, Mr. Slate, I think that's all you need to know about him. Mr. Slate. But he did so many other shows. He also did Dr. Benton Quest on Johnny Quest, the original. Episode 2 is titled Alice's Dress. Alice wants to wear a revealing dress to Harry's award ceremony until he gives her a taste of her own medicine. Maybe a little background here, since we didn't get too much into ages. If we're estimating ages, Alice is probably about 16 or 17-ish. Chet is roughly the same age. I think Alice is the oldest kid. Chet is like 15, 14, and Jamie is the youngest kid. He's probably in the range of, let's say, 7 or 8. So she wants to wear this revealing dress, which really is like close to transparent. So she's showing off all the goods at like age 16 or 17, and Harry's having none of it. Harry has old-fashioned morals. He is not into a lot of the stuff that the kids are doing at that time. And this is one of them. Because think about the 70s and late 60s with mini skirts and liberation and freedom and whatnot. Harry's a little bit on the conservative side in terms of not being as progressive as his kids. One voice that we didn't mention is we didn't mention the voice of Ralph Kane, the next door neighbor, that sort of crackpot conspiracy theorist, voiced by Jack Burns from Burns and Schreiber. We talked about him about 6 months ago when we talked about Fridays. He was the announcer on Fridays. That'll take us to episode 3, titled The Hippie. Chet idolizes his new hippie friend until he learns his new friend is not all he seems. The hippie is a bit of a leech. Tries taking advantage of the Boyle's goodness. We do have a voice for the hippie, though. This is a pretty interesting voice for a hippie, because when you hear the name, I don't really think of this guy as the hippie type. He's more of a World War II POW type. Richard Dawson. And I should say the hippie's name is Claude. Claude the hippie, voiced by Richard Dawson. And we also should add, obviously, not just known from Hogan's Heroes. He did a little show called Family Feud, I think it's called. I can't read what it says on my screen. Family Feud, okay. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that show. Going on to episode 4. Episode 4 is titled The Beach Vacation. When Harry and Irma plan their vacation at a beach house, they get more than they bargained for. Things get complicated when Alice wants to wear a string bikini, and Harry must decide whether or not to press charges against a nude sunbather who will not leave his property. So now we're getting into nudism. We're getting into the fashion of the day. I mean, we talked about the transparent top earlier, but now we're talking about, again, a 16, 17-year-old girl wearing a string bikini, which is a little bit risque in 1972, what have you. So, yeah, it's not all fun and games when the Boyles go on vacation. But playing that hippie doesn't even have a name, just called Sunbather, Ed Begley Jr. So apparently he took his vegetable oil-powered TARDIS to 1972 and went to the beach and was nude. Voicing a police officer in this episode, a well-known name in the world of animation and voiceover work, Dawes Butler. Where can we start with him? Yogi Bear, Elroy Jetson, He also voiced Chilly Willy. And I think this is the part where Barney Gumble comes on and says, "We want Chilly Willy. We want Chilly Willy.
We want Chilly Willy. We want Chilly Willy."
I knew Greg would do it a lot better than me. But yeah, absolute legend Dawes Butler, Chilly Willy, Elroy Jetson, and Yogi Bear. I mean, seriously, 3 great cartoon characters. And we have another voice, no character name though, voiced by Florence Hallop. She was the second bailiff on Night Court after Selma Diamond passed away, but before Marsha Warfield came along and said, "No more bailiffs are dying on my watch." She was the bailiff, I think it was just for season 3, because I do believe Selma Diamond was seasons 1 and 2, and then you had Florence Hallop in season 3, and then she passed away, and from season 4 till 9, you had Marsha Warfield. And you know, once Night Court found a bailiff who survived, it thrived. That was the thing holding it back. The second bailiffs kept on dying. Don't at me. Episode 5 is titled Help Wanted. Here's where a little bit of controversy comes into play, a little bit of a hot topic. Harry attempts to be an equal opportunity employer, but faces the problem of many small businessmen when he has only one opening and a dozen help that minority groups are clamoring for preference. So what happened is one of the employees, a driver, got fired, and he was of Jewish descent, and there were a lot of groups coming after Harry and saying, "Hey, you've got to hire somebody, a minority." And ultimately, I believe what happened is he just brought back the driver he fired. But again, you see here, you've got the issues of diversity, affirmative action. I don't even want to say racial quotas. I'm not that racial quotas were maybe necessarily a thing back in 1972, but you're seeing more of these hot button topics. Again, not a show for the kids. Lenny Weinrib actually has a voice in this episode as Will Whitecloud. Boy, that's not terribly racist. But we do have a couple of other voices in this episode, well-known voices, one in the voice acting world, but one in another segment of the entertainment industry. Portraying 3 voices, actually, Chicano representative / Eddie James / government agent, 3 in 1. And honestly, you can't do Chicano representative nowadays from this guy. But Alan Melvin voices those people. We've talked about him in the past. He voiced Barney Hefner on 95 episodes of Archie Bunker's Place back in the late 70s and early 80s. But again, another reasonably well-known voice in the voice acting world. Again, can't necessarily pin down one voice that he's known for, but he's done plenty of voices. He did also portray Corporal Steve Henshaw on 142 episodes of The Phil Silvers Show, if you remember that back in the 50s. Well, maybe you don't remember back in the 50s, but you've seen it in reruns. The other voice, voicing Betsy, Isabel Sanford from The Jeffersons. So we're talking 2 years before The Jeffersons. So that started in 74. Episode 6 is titled Love Story. Oh, well, you know, there was a movie around that time called Love Story. Maybe it's related. I doubt it. Alice falls for a young beggar that asked Harry for money. Worse yet, when the young man asks her to marry him, she says yes, which horrifies Harry. However, when he meets the young man's wealthy parents, he sees dollar signs in his little girl's future. We do have a voice, and I'm going to guess this is that, I don't want to say kid, but this is that homeless person, the young beggar that ends up marrying Alice. His name is Norman, and he's voiced by Marvin Kaplan. He's done a few voices. I don't think he's necessarily well known as a voice actor, but again, going back to one of my favorite cartoons of all time, Top Cat, he voiced Choo Choo. He was the pink sidekick of TC. Episode 7 is titled The Victim. While out bowling with Ralph, Harry gets mugged and knocked unconscious, leaving a big lump on his head. At first, Chet and Alice are all for the mugger getting sent to jail. However, when they find out that the young man came from a poor family, they demand that Harry drop the charges. Again, not your nice Saturday morning animated cartoon. This is not a topic you're going to see on the networks on Saturday mornings. We have a lot of repeating voices in this episode. John Stevenson is in this episode as a doctor and a minister and a prosecutor. 3 in 1. And Lenny Weinrib plays a person named Cohen and also the voice of the judge. So they're getting their money's worth out of this. Episode 8 is titled Chet's Job. Chet finally takes a job which could make him a millionaire. Alternatively, Harry gives his slacker son Chet an ultimatum. Either find a job and pay rent or get out of the house. Chet decides to find a job but ends up quitting after making enough money to pay his rent to the end of the year.
Wait, pay what, Mike?
His mortgage?
No. What was that 4-letter word he said earlier?
Oh, I've said many 4-letter words in this podcast. I don't know what you're talking about.
It begins with R, and ends with T, and then there's an N. You know, I could solve the puzzle, but I'm going to buy a vowel here. I'm going to buy an E.
I need to put the Wheel of Fortune buzzer in here just to irritate you. Okay. He had to pay the rent.
He had to pay the rent.
I want to see rent.
He had to pay the rent, yes. Are you proud of yourself, Greg?
Yes.
I know you. Yeah, I know you are. I didn't even have to ask you that.
Hey, Mike, can you believe it's now 313 episodes since I mentioned for the first time ever on this podcast I love wings?
Okay, don't be crapping all over my birthday episode, Greg. You know, we don't need to be hearing about rent and wings and all that. No, you don't do that on a birthday episode. You do it on your birthday episode. Don't be doing it on my birthday episode. Okay,
Mike,
I'll let you do it this time. Just do it.
You love wings, Mike. It made Tony Shalhoub's career.
It did. You're right.
Hey, you also love Tony Shalhoub's bread adventure.
Tony Shalhoub's bread adventure? You mean Tony Shalhoub breaking bread for the uninformed, but yeah, Tony Shalhoub's bread adventure. Even though I don't know if that's coming back. I hope it does, but I haven't heard anything about that. And you got to figure if it's coming back that they're going to be recording soon because it'll probably debut sometime around September, October-ish. Maybe Tony Shalhoub's going to go on a different adventure. Maybe he's seen all the breads. Maybe he's going to go on a dessert adventure.
Oh, I would love that.
Just sampling desserts from around the world? Oh, absolutely. There's only so many breads you can devour. We do have Lenny Weinrib playing Mr. Bushnell in this episode, so I'm going to guess that he is Chet's boss. Episode 9 is titled Chet's Fiancé. Oh, now he's going to get married. Lovely. Chet announces that he has finally met the one and announces that he intends to spend the rest of his life with her. However, Harry and Irma are shocked when they find out that spending the rest of his life with the girl doesn't necessarily mean getting married when he tells them that he will be living with her and that he still won't go to work but will live off the system. Wait a second. You just made a bunch of money and now you're not going to go to work and you're going to live off the system. Where did the money go? You literally were like close to retirement, or at least sounded like you're close to retirement in the last episode. Now you're going to live off the system, you leech.
Yeah, where's the money?
No, I think we need Jimmy Walker there. Where's the
money?
That's what we needed. And again, Lenny Weinrib comes on and is another voice, Reverend McQueeg. So I'm guessing he's the Justice of the Peace who marries these two kids. Episode 10 is titled The Mouse. Jamie brings home a mouse that he intends not to only keep as a pet, but to train so he can charge admission when it performs. What the heck? Who's going to pay money to see a performing mouse and just shut your mouths. Don't say anything about Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse or Mighty Mouse or Jerry or any of the other mice that have been in cartoons that have been super talented. Nobody's paying good money to see a performing mouse. Maybe Topo Gigio. However, this doesn't set well with Irma and Alice, who are both deathly afraid of it. Harry, behind Irma's back, tells Jamie he can keep it as long as it stays in the garage. Unfortunately, when the mouse turns up missing, Jamie blames Harry and decides to run away from home. It's a frigging mouse! Jeez! Besides a voice by John Stevenson, there's no name guests in this episode, so we'll hop on over to episode 11, Duty Calls. Once again, Harry tries to get a job for Chet. Unfortunately, his efforts fail when Chet calls for a recall of several perfectly good pots made at Harry's plant. However, Harry's anger at his son turns to concern as Chet gets his draft notice. Oh yeah, this is 1972. There still is a little thing going on in Vietnam. Chet then shocks his father by announcing that he will avoid the draft by escaping to Canada. Now Harry must try to not only try to delay Chet's induction, but try to keep him out of prison for draft evasion. Again, pretty hot topic for 1972. The draft and not going over to Vietnam. And again, we have voices from Dawes Butler, John Stevenson, and Lenny Weinrib. So you're seeing a lot of the same names popping up. I wonder what type of controversy we're going to get in episode 12. Let's find out. Episode 12, Expectant Papa. Irma informs Harry that she may be pregnant with their fourth child. While he is both excited and terrified about the prospect that he is about to become a father again in his mid-40s, everyone else seems to be against the idea. Ralph is afraid that the baby might turn out to become a radical, and Harry's accountant thinks that the baby might lead to financial ruin. However, he is most horrified by Chet and Alice's reaction, as they don't want to see a new baby arrive in an already overcrowded world. So you've got the kids who are worried about overpopulation, and you've got Harry's accountant worried about the financials, and you've got the next door neighbor who's a militia conspiracy theorist, doesn't want the baby to be a radical. How dare that baby turn out to be Democrat? Well, that's essentially, I think, what they mean when they talk about radicals in this series. Because, this is the Nixon years, and Nixon was a Republican. This is the first episode where Willie Ames voices Jamie Boyle. But we do have another well-known name in the voice acting industry. No characters listed, but Don Messick is in this episode. He's done so much stuff. Dr. Benton Quest in the 90s, so we're talking, I don't think necessarily the new Johnny Quest, but could be in that era. He voiced Scooby-Doo, Hampton Pig, not my favorite character from Tiny Toon Adventures, but not going to slight him. He voiced Droopy on a number of series. Again, just a well-known name from voice acting. Episode 13 is titled The New Car. Harry buys a lemon from a used car lot and returns to humiliate the car dealership by posing as a satisfied customer during a live TV telecast. We actually have a well-known name portraying that auto dealer, Smilin' Sam. Played by Pat Harrington Jr., Schneider from One Day at a Time. This episode actually caused a bit of controversy because a name that you guys may know, I know Chico does, and I'm pretty sure Greg knows this name, Cal Worthington saw a lot of himself in this episode and actually sued Hanna-Barbera and 5 NBC-owned television stations over this episode because the portrayal was too close to home. So now we get a little controversy, not just in terms of what is being broadcast on Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, but now it's actually going out to court cases. This is the only time I've seen a court case regarding this series, but still, that's a pretty big one when Cal Worthington and his dog Spot are like, no, you're making fun of me. You're directly ripping me off. I'm taking you to court. And I'm guessing that due to, I don't want to say satire laws or parody laws, but you're allowed to make fun of people within reason. I mean, as long as you didn't call him Cal Worthington and his dog Spot, you should be in good shape. Now that we got that legalese out of the way, we're going to go to episode 14, which is titled The New House. Harry decides between a costly renovation or moving into a more expensive house. And, you see, this is another one of those things. You can get away with this in 1972. You can't get away with this nowadays. Pat Harrington Jr. is back. He's voicing Mr. Takamoto. Episode 15 is titled The Prowler. After a rash of burglaries in the neighborhood, Ralph calls a meeting on how to deal with the problem, and it immediately turns into a recruitment rally for his vigilante group. Because, that's something that Ralph would do. A vigilante group. Unfortunately, another burglary takes place during the meeting, and Harry becomes a suspect not only due to the fact that he left the meeting early, but he was seen the next morning rummaging through one of the neighbors' windows while looking for Julius. Now he must clear his name before Ralph and his vigilantes put him in front of a firing squad. I'm going to hope that's not a literal firing squad, but just a firing squad in a metaphorical sense. I don't think there's firing squads in 1972. But who knows under the Nixon presidency? Pat Harrington does another voice in this episode. Character name is unknown, though. Episode 16 is titled Mama's Identity. Harry Boyle's wife, Irma, liberates herself from domestic shackles and becomes a working woman. Again, sounds very 1970s, very liberation-oriented. Another hot topic from back then. In another capsule, it says, in an attempt to be more than just a housewife and mother, Irma takes a job as a secretary at a law firm, but struggles with sexual discrimination and competition from a younger, prettier coworker, while Ralph and Harry worry that women in the workplace will lead to men being treated like sex objects and second-class citizens. So not only are we getting into women getting into the working world, but now we're getting into the world of sexual discrimination and age discrimination. Episode 17 is titled The Patient. Harry enters an expensive hospital for routine tests and finds himself the subject of a gallbladder transplant, which is scheduled for worldwide telecast. Episode 18 is titled The Swimming Pool. A backyard battle erupts between Harry and Ralph when they share expenses for a swimming pool. Where's Huddle did this first 3 years earlier. Episode 19 is titled Sweet 16. Daughter Alice's 16th birthday forces Harry to float a bank loan to cover party costs. So actually, going back to talking about the transparent top in episode 2, she wasn't 16 or 17 at the time. She was 15. Just makes everything a little creepier. Just taking away a year or two there. Ugh. Episode 20 is titled The Commune. Harry tangles with the guru leader of a hippie commune when Alice announces she is joining the commune. Wait about 26 years later, and you're going to sort of see this from Family Guy when Meg gets involved with a cult. Okay, maybe a commune's not a cult, but again, just wait 26 years. We're almost to the end of season 1. Episode 21 is Music Tycoon. Chet informs Harry and Irma that he is going to meet with some of his former college classmates to discuss their future. At first, they think that Chet is going back to college to finally earn his degree. However, they are shocked when he tells them that the guys he met are all dropping out of college to form a rock band, and that he is going to be their manager, and after the group has a major hit with their first single, Chet goes on a spending spree. However, he soon finds out that success in the music business can be fleeting. Chet's had all sorts of jobs. This is crazy for somebody who's like 17, 18 years old. He's had like 4 or 5 different jobs just in like the first 20 or so episodes. Kid can't hold down a job. Episode 22 of season 1 is Accidents Will Happen. Harry is deluged with legal aid after he slips in a restaurant in front of 100 lawyers attending a conference. There's a joke in there somewhere. I'm not going to touch it. He slips in a restaurant in front of 100 lawyers who are attending a conference. Episode 23 is titled Papa in New York. Harry's overnight business trip to New York becomes a disaster when he is persuaded to take his family and neighbor Ralph. It's an overnight business trip. You don't need to take the whole family. Yeah, what is there to see in New York in 1973? Well, World Trade Center would have opened about that time, so maybe that's a possible thing to see. But 73, were the Yankees good? I don't think so. Were the Mets good? I'm sorry. Well, no, 73. They won the World Series in 69. Okay, Greg, tell us the history of the Mets in 1973.
They went to the World Series against the A's, silly.
I thought they were nobody back in 1973. I'm sorry.
That was the NLCS where Pete Rose got into the fight with Buddy Harrelson, the famous fight.
Pete Rose fought Woody Harrelson, you said?
Buddy Harrelson.
I just want to see if you're paying attention.
No, but if it was about the Guardians, then you'd freaking know. Oh.
He's not wrong. I'm not even going to fight it.
Because as we've established on this podcast, Mike doesn't know shit about NL ball.
He's not wrong, because how often do the Guardians play NL teams? They play them like one series a year, unless you're the Cincinnati Reds, and we play them for two game series. We play them for 4 games a year. It's the awful truth. But hey, ask me about AL ball. Wipe your ass on the floor with that. But anyhow, moving on to episode 24, the final episode of season 1. It's titled The Neighbors. When a newlywed couple have their first fight, the Boyles are caught in the middle trying to get their neighbors reconciled and end up having their own marital misunderstanding. We have a voice as the husband of that newlywed couple. Casey Kasem. He voices George in this episode. I don't even think we need to talk about who Casey Kasem is. We could talk about Shaggy in the Scooby-Doo series. We could talk about America's Top 40. We could talk about his... Oh gosh, I don't know how to say this without being slanderous. We could talk about his wife, who was in the Tortellis, who was an absolute gold digger, and life imitated art, because in real life she was a gold digger. Come at me, bro.
We could talk about the time they did that dedication to that little dog named Snuggles.
Oh, no. Greg, oh. No. Well, I mean, yeah, we could talk about that, but no. I don't want to hear about the dedication to the dog named Snuggles. I know all about that. So that's the first season. Season 2, we've got only 20 episodes compared to 24, but there's a weird little thing here. I said this ran for 3 seasons, but really it's more like 2 and like a sixth or 2 and a quarter, because season 3 ends up being only 4 episodes. Why? I don't know. But we're not going to worry about season 3 right now. We're going to talk about season 2, and we are going to start with episode 1, which is bringing up Jamie. Jamie gets in a fight at school. Instead of spanking, his parents take him to a child psychologist. We don't have a name for the child psychologist, so we're going to move on to episode 2, which is The Lady Detective. After being burglarized, Detective Phyllis Dexter is on the case for the Boyle family. And I almost screwed up the name, because playing Detective Phyllis Dexter is Phyllis Diller. We do have another name, though unfortunately there's no character name attached to this person, but Alan Oppenheimer is in this episode as well. Yes, Skeletor makes an appearance on Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. Episode 3 is titled Permissive Papa. Alice wants to go to an all-night rock concert, but she needs Harry's permission. You're not getting your father's permission. You're 16 years old. You've done a lot of scandalous things in the first season. No. Harry's not letting you go to the concert. I haven't seen that episode, so I don't know if he actually does let her go to the concert. Episode 4 is titled The Boyles on TV. A TV producer wants to make a documentary about the Boyle family. Boy, doesn't this sound familiar, because remember around this time, there was a documentary about the Loud family on PBS. I'm guessing it's about 73, 74, 72. So again, art is imitating life here. Episode 5 in season 2 is titled My Wife the Secretary. While Harry's secretary gets married and goes on her honeymoon, while in the midst of his selling season, he tries to find a replacement, and so far he can't find anyone. When Irma offers to fill in, Harry doesn't want to work with his wife. So Irma dons a disguise and applies under a different name and is accepted. And when he tells her to tell someone who's been annoying him to go away, she mistakes the client who has a big order as that person. Uh-oh.
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 No names to note there, so we're going to go on to episode 6 of season 2, Papa the Housewife. Well, it sounds like role reversal here. Harry tries to take over the household shopping and treat it as a business, but finds himself in over his head. Again, Alan Oppenheimer does a voice, but we don't know who that voice is. Episode 7 is titled Jamie's Project. Jamie's class has to do an American history project. Harry is adamant about not helping, so Jamie can build self-reliance. Another parent begins an unspoken competition with Harry about the kids' projects. Episode 8 of season 2 is titled Don for the Defense. When a girl runs into Harry's car, she sues him. Harry then calls a lawyer he knows who sends his son to handle the case. And the guy turns out to be an idiot. Obvious lawyer joke here. We actually have two voices, two well-known names playing the lawyer and the lawyer's son. Voicing the lawyer, Don Gibson Sr., is Dick Van Patten. 8 is enough. I think that's all we need to say. 8 is enough. We could talk about Spaceballs. I think we definitely have to add that. But we all know who Dick Van Patten is. And actually, Greg, just saw yesterday on MeTV, getting ready for work, Vince Van Patten played a juvenile delinquent. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is what gets him into like doing poker games when he's like super young. He's being a juvenile delinquent on Adam 12, and he was also on the pilot episode of Canon. So we're seeing like the, well, not evolution, but sort of like the de-evolution of Vincent Van Patten. He's getting arrested on the Adam 12. He's involved with Canon on the first episode. He's just a troublemaker. Wait until 2003 when poker makes it big on TV.
Oh, yeah, and he's calling poker action with Mike Sexton.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Oh, I watch the World Poker Tour channel on Plex all the time.
I used to watch the World Poker Tour when it was on Travel Channel, but then World Poker Tour started changing channels like every year. It was on GSN, it was on Fox Sports, it was on who knows where. It's somewhere nowadays. I don't even know where the heck it is, but it just like goes all over the place. I think even for a while it was on Vice. Now, Vice shows a lot of poker shows. I don't know if they've shown World Poker Tour, but wouldn't surprise me if Vice had it for a while. So that's Don Gibson Sr. Don Gibson Jr. I don't know how this guy pulls off being a junior, but, you know, given who it is, he could do anything. Don Adams. Agent 86 himself. Maxwell Smart for those who don't know what Agent 86 is. But also, I think I'd be totally remiss if I didn't also say this is the same Don Adams who back in the mid-'80s was the supermarket manager on the classic Canadian sitcom Check It Out.
I thought you were going for Inspector Gadget.
You know, I could do that, but I'm sorry. Check It Out takes precedence in this case. It is such a crappy show, but it ran for like 3 seasons. It aired on USA, and even still reruns nowadays on the 80s Flashback channel, which shows all the D.L. Taffner TV shows. The Ropers, and Three's Company, and Three's a Crowd, and Talk About. They also show Check It Out. Plus also, we made reference to Check It Out, I think it was last week, because we said that someone who was on I forget what we even did last week because I'm Mr. Short-Term Memory, but that person was on the first season of Check It Out. She was, excuse the phrasing, she was the black cashier in season 1. But there you go. Like 2 times in 3 episodes, we talked about the Canadian classic Check It Out. Now I feel guilty just calling her the black lady on Check It Out. I should give her a proper name. Tanya Williams, who played Jennifer Woods. What did we talk about last week? I forgot what we talked about.
What's happening now?
Okay, all right. That's what it was, is what's happening now. We talked about her and what's happening now last week. So there you go. 2 mentions to Check It Out in 3 episodes, unless somehow one of the dogs in the dog competition last week was on Check It Out as well, which that'd be pretty darn amazing for a dog to be in a talent show in 2002, 2003, and also have appeared on Check It Out in like 1985. Episode 9 is titled Alice's Diet. Again, another kind of hot topic issue back in the 70s. Alice falls for the new boy in school, but only has eyes for the most popular girl, who is much more beautiful and several pounds lighter. Alice then decides to go on a diet to try and lose weight, but is unsuccessful. Harry then decides to send her to a health resort not only to lose weight, but to ensure she hooks up with a much more handsome boy and not her more homely boyfriend Herbie. When she returns, she is several pounds lighter and much more glamorous. However, when he talks to the other girl's father, Harry begins to have fears that the boys will want to date her for all the wrong reasons. Episode 10 is Mama Loves Monty. Irma goes on Let's Make a Deal with Monty Hall in hopes of winning something for her husband for their 25th anniversary. And I'm suddenly wondering, why the heck have I not seen this episode? I need to actually look on Friendly TV to see if this is coming up soon. I'm shocked that I somehow missed an episode with Monty Hall or Let's Make a Deal. As you might assume, since we're talking about Let's Make a Deal, Monty Hall is in this episode voicing, of all people, Monty Hall. I know, go figure. We do have another name, though. Again, no character name, but Ronnie Shell's in this episode. From Gomer Pyle. And still with us at 94. He's going to turn 95 in December. Episode 11 of Season 2 is titled Alice's Crush. Alice is in love with a new boy. Harry tries to undermine Irma by finding out who the mystery man is. John Stevenson provides voices again, no names, so he might provide the voice of this new boy. Episode 12 of Season 2 is Papa's Big Check. The IRS accidentally sends a refund of $940,000 instead of $94 to the Boyles. Again, Family Guy did this 26 years later. The first episode, the pilot, when Peter Griffin gets a check too big from the government and he starts throwing it out at the Super Bowl onto the field. We've seen this. Or is this just like proof that Seth MacFarlane can't come up with an original idea? He's actually cribbing ideas from Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. Ronnie Shell again provides a voice in this episode, no character name. Same with Pat Harrington Jr. Episode 13 is titled Mama's Charity. Irma's Ladies Club is looking for a cause to invest their charity work. No names there, so we're going to move on to episode 14, Chet's Pad. Harry feels that he and Irma have been unfair by constantly providing for Chet. So Harry gives Chet a push out of the nest to live on his own. Alan Oppenheimer provides voice in this episode. That's the only name besides the usual cast of characters, so we're going to go to episode 15, Papa the Coach. Harry accidentally volunteers to be the coach of Jamie's basketball team. Alan Melvin provides a voice for Mr. Adler in this episode, whomever he is. Episode 16 is titled Birdman Chet. Bonding over saving the condors, young Jamie is starting to imitate some of slacker Chet's habits. This worries Irma and Harry, so Harry starts taking Chet to Harry's work. Episode 17 is titled Back to Nature. Upset that the family's life is based around their individual television schedules, Harry bans the device in the house in hopes that everyone will turn off the television set and turn on real life. Never going to happen. Just ask how that's working with devices nowadays. Kids are so attached to them. Episode 18 is titled Alice's Freedom. Irma's mother Selma comes for a visit. To make room for her, Alice decides to stay at Mary Lou's. Alice discovers more freedoms than she is used to and flexes her independence. Episode 19 is titled Don Knotts the Beekeeper. Yes, you heard me right. Don Knotts the Beekeeper. I wonder who might be in this episode.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, with a title like Don Knotts the Beekeeper, who would play Don Knotts the Beekeeper?
Let's find out. The Boyles find their home and backyard swarming with bees. They call in Charlie Bumbles Johnson to remedy the situation. I don't want to shock you, Greg, but playing Charlie Bumbles Johnson in this episode?
Hold on, Mike. I think I know. Given the title, okay? You ready?
I'm not going to say a word. I'm going to let you chime in with who you think voices Charlie Bumbles Johnson in this episode.
Okay, Bizarre Whammy, do you want to say it? Yes, Greg. Norman Fell. No. Bizarre Whammy. No. It's Don Knotts, not Norman Fell. Wrong person from Three's Company.
No, he's actually right. Norman Fell did voice Charlie Bumbles Johnson in this episode. No, of course it's Don Knotts. But I was actually hoping he was going to say Don Knotts, and I was going to say, no, Bizarre Whammy. It's actually Norman Fell who's voicing Charles Bumble Johnson in this episode.
Oh, my God.
Hold on, Mike. Hold on. Do you want to see my best impression of Mr. Roper?
Okay, yes, I do want to. No, yes, do it. Do it. He's mugging for the
camera.
Yeah, he's mugging for the camera. This is beautiful. Did Helen burn the meatloaf again? Well, I guess then that's why he was mugging to the camera. Helen burned the meatloaf. He's just looking at me waving. What the hell's happening? All right. Moving on to the last episode of season 2, mercifully. Maud loves Papa. Maud Frickert. Oh, I wonder who's going to be in this episode. Maud Frickert is late on her payments to Harry's restaurant supplies. Harry goes to confront her, and she takes him on some wild adventures. Okay, I think in season 2, we're sort of deviating away from the social issues, and now we're seeing more of a traditional cartoon with sort of sitcom elements. Because, we don't have the issues of transparent tops and wearing bikinis to the beach and nudists and some of the other issues that arose in season 1. Now we're seeing more goofy plot lines. So as I was saying, since we mentioned the name Maud Frickert, one name should come to mind: Jonathan Winters. So as I said, that's season 2, but season 3 is quite the anomaly. I don't know if season 3 is supposed to be part of season 2, because as I said earlier, season 3 is literally 4 episodes. Who knows, but it's technically marked as a 3rd season. Why they do just 4 episodes, I have no idea. But we'll jump into those 4 episodes, starting with episode 1 of season 3, Rich Little Super... Okay, I wonder who's in this episode. Rich Little Super Sleuth. Does Bizarre Whammy want to take a guess as to who's on this episode? And if you say Fred Travalina, I will go through my screen and punch you in the face, Whammy. So as I was saying, Harry's asked to help a private investigator who's been hired to protect some gold coins being stored in a bank near Harry's office. The guy named Rich Little relies on his ability to imitate anyone's voice to get the job done. But when the bank is robbed and he's fired, he turns to Harry for help. Providing the voice of Rich Little in this episode, Bizarre Whammy, do you want to take this one?
Okay, I'm going to take a guess. Is it Rich Hall? Because I love Sniglets. No, Bizarre Whammy. Rich Hall wouldn't be on not necessarily the news for like another decade. Sorry.
I didn't know that Bizarro Whammy was a fan of Sniglets. I'm kind of surprised Bizarro Whammy even knows what a Sniglet is. Oh my gosh. Playing Rich Little in this episode is Rich Little. Let's just get it out of the way. But we do have another voice playing Sam, who I'm guessing maybe somebody involved with the bank or something like that, is Arnold Stang, yet another veteran of Top Cat. We had John Stevenson earlier. We had, I forget who the other voice was that we talked about earlier, but Arnold Stang, he's the big man himself. He was Top Cat. So we have 3/5 of the voices of Top Cat in this episode. And I know at least one of them had passed away by this point. So, 3 of the 4 living voices on Top Cat were in this series. Boy, after seeing Rich Little and seeing Jonathan Winters and seeing Don Knotts in the last 3 episodes, I kind of wonder who we're going to get in season 3, episode 2. Which celebrity is going to make an appearance here? Looks like the answer is nobody. The episode's titled Model Alice. The family invites the famous Hungarian artist Laszlo to dinner. He asks Alice to be one of his nude models. Alice is 17. What the heck? We do have a voice as a doctor in this episode. So this isn't Laszlo. This is just a doctor. But we've got Ross Martin in this episode. From Wild Wild West, Artemis Gordon. Such a creative show back in the day. But actually, I told the guys this. I said, if we ever talk about Wild Wild West, I've got a sort of amazing discovery. Not really an amazing discovery. It's kind of gruesome. The creator of Wild Wild West is a guy by the name of Michael Garrison. I had never heard of him. You probably hadn't either. The reason why you may not have heard of him is after season 1, he either got a new house or he upgraded his house. And one of the things that he put in was marble steps. Because obviously he's very successful on this show and he's raking in the money. Shortly after installing these steps in either this new house or this existing house, he spilled a drink on the marble steps and tumbled to his death after hitting his head on the marble steps. I thought that was absolutely creepy.
Why'd you have to bring this up? Wait.
Again,
why'd you have to bring this up?
I thought this was interesting. Yeah, I don't like generally bringing death into this, but again, seeing this producer, Michael Garrison, saying, I've never heard of this guy. I mean, this isn't some guy like, just throw out names. We'll say Quinn Martin just for poops and giggles. But, this isn't some known producer who did shows in the 60s and 70s and 80s. No, this is a guy who, best I can tell, he had the Wild Wild West, and after the first season, he passed away in this accident, slipping on these marble steps and not even concussing himself, literally just giving him like brain damage.
Why did you have to mention this? Why?
It's my birthday episode. Shut up. I'm going to do what I want. But yeah, there's my morbid, amazing discovery. That's not even going to get amazing discovery music. 2 more episodes. Episode 3 of season 3, Marriage Counselor. Newlyweds Irene and George have a fight. Irene moves in with the Boyles. Irma decides to invite a marriage counselor for dinner to try to help. However, the marriage counselor starts to help the Boyles. That doesn't go as well as planned. That's going to take us to the final episode called Car 54. Officer Gunter Tootie of Car 54, Where Are You? Is looking for a moonlighting job, so the Boyles give him the idea of a childcare business. When Chet gets involved, the Boyles' basement becomes ground zero for the business. And as you might guess, if we have Gunther Tootie from Car 54, Where Are You? In this episode, you get the voice of Gunther Tootie himself, Joe E. Ross. I almost feel like doing an ooh, ooh, ooh here. Sort of like Gunther Tootie did on Car 54, Where Are You? Ooh, ooh, ooh. We also have Ronnie Shell providing a voice in this episode as well. So that's 48 episodes. Not bad for a syndicated non-Saturday morning cartoon. I don't know if we can necessarily say what happened. Maybe it was just sort of an anomaly because it was not a Saturday morning cartoon. It was generally in prime time, prime access. I saw time slots ranging from like 6, 7 o'clock to even 11:30 after the news, signed to go against Carson or whatever else was on at that point on weekends or Friday nights or what have you. So maybe it just ran its course. Maybe people got a little disenchanted when the series went from really touching on hot button topics to more of a traditional kind of sitcom-y type of cartoon. It's about as good of a reason as any that I have for why this didn't work, but also, maybe the shelf life on this type of series is legitimately 2 seasons or 2 seasons plus 4 episodes. If you want to see this, there's great news because you can find episodes of Wait Till Your Father Gets Home on MeTV Tunes every Sunday night from 11 p.m. to midnight. You get 2 episodes a week, and it's actually aired on MeTV Tunes in some capacity since day one. Used to be on 5 nights a week, 1 episode per night, but it's been on MeTV Tunes now for the better part of 2 years. This series is also available, at least season 1 was released in 2007. Season 2 and season 3 never got DVD releases, but just about a year ago, January 28th of 2025, Warner Archive Collection released the entire series on Blu-ray. And actually, there's a couple of retrospective featurettes, Animation for the Nation, and Illustrating the Times. So again, they get into the issues of the day that were tackled specifically in season 1. So if you want to see the series, you can get it on Blu-ray or you can get it on MeTV Tunes. So what can we say about Wait Till Your Father Gets Home? They pushed the envelope, at least in season 1. Got to give them credit for that. That's not something that I think you'd necessarily see on TV, especially back then. It was much more conservative back then in terms of what aired on TV. Maybe it'd find a place on TV nowadays. But after the first season, it just became a pretty generic type of cartoon show, just not aimed for kids, just sort of like an animated sitcom. But Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, it's beloved around these parts. And for that reason, for my 51st birthday, I'm making it just a thing on TV. You can find us at our website, itwasathingontv.com, on Facebook at It Was a Thing on TV Podcast, and elsewhere at It Was a Thing on TV. You can find us on any podcast player, and we're also on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our releases, including what's coming up next time. We're going to talk about a spin-off of a very popular TV show. The spin-off lasted 2 seasons, and unbeknownst to me right now, it lasted 2 seasons. I thought it lasted 1 season. That's how much I wanted to get it out of my memory. But the parent series lasted about 10 seasons. So, needless to say, it was a flop on several levels. It's not Joey Loves Chachi because we already talked about that. So, what other spin-off of a popular TV series could we be talking about? I guess next time we're going to have to ask you guys one question. How you doing? And we're going to ask that question right here next week on It Was a Thing on TV. Thank you to Greg. Thank you to Chico. Thank you for listening. Come back next week when we talk about, I don't even know what that series is. Heck, I only thought it ran for 1 season, so what the heck do I know? Greg, I think we need a roar.
Rah! Now hear this.
Meet Harry Boyle.
Look at me. What do you see?
Husband, father, human stress ball.
I've got 2 kids who don't care.
He's got a far-out son, a liberated daughter, and his voice of reason.
Hang in there, Pop.
You raise kids, you work for them, feed them, and what do you get?
You get
Wait till your father gets home.
tonight at 11, 10 Central on MeTV Tunes.
Bang!